My name is Alyssa. My husband always jokes that I'm a real-life superhero, but I didn't save anyone else's life that day. The only person I managed to save was myself. This story happened back in 1989. My husband and I had been married for just a year, and we had recently moved into a unit in an apartment complex located near the hospital where he worked. Since my husband was a surgeon who frequently worked overnight shifts, I spent most of my evenings at home completely alone. In the beginning, I tried to get to know my neighbors. Most of them were very friendly, except for one man who lived in the apartment right next door. He always wore a grumpy expression and almost never responded when I said hello. The other neighbors also mentioned he was a difficult person to get along with, so I stopped trying to make conversation with him. My husband and I hoped our lives in the new place would soon settle down so we could start planning for a baby. But just a few weeks after moving in, I fell into a state of intense discomfort and unease. I even thought the apartment was haunted because of a series of bizarre occurrences. First, our bedroom smelled faintly of cigarette smoke every single night, even though neither my husband nor I smoked. Next, my underwear was frequently messed with, and a few pieces even vanished without a trace. Worst of all, I always had a vague, creepy feeling, like a pair of eyes was staring down at me from above. I told my husband about it a few times, but he figured I just hadn't adjusted to the new environment yet. Every time he came home from a long shift at the hospital, he was completely exhausted, so I didn't want to cause him any extra worry. Because of that, I tried to ignore everything until the true horror happened 3 months later. Late one night, while my husband was away on another overnight shift, I was jolted awake by a noise coming from the walk-in closet. Thinking it was just a mouse, I got up to check. I walked inside and flipped on the light. The exact moment I looked up at the ceiling, my entire body froze in pure terror. The drywall panel covering the ceiling crawl space access had been pushed to the side. From that dark opening, a man was slowly lowering himself down. When his feet hit the floor, I was horrified to realize it was the neighbor from next door. We stood frozen, staring at each other for a few seconds. Suddenly, he snapped, his eyes rolling back in a crazed frenzy. He whipped a sharp knife out of his pocket and lunged straight at me. There was no chance to escape, and there was no time to call for help. In a split second, where life and death hung in the balance, I fought back in absolute desperation. He swung the knife, aiming a fatal stab straight into my chest. Instinctively, I threw my hands up to protect myself. A sharp, agonizing pain shot through my entire body as the blade pierced right through my palm of my hand like paper. Blood immediately sprayed everywhere. I used every ounce of strength I had left to scratch his face with my other hand and scream for help. God saved my life when, during a moment of struggle, he lost his footing and slammed hard into the wardrobe. Recognizing my only chance to survive, I immediately bolted out of the room and screamed for everyone to call the police. My husband rushed right back home the moment I called to tell him what happened. The police arrived quickly, and a manhunt took place that very night. They caught the sick neighbor right inside his own apartment. At that moment, he was in his bathroom trying to wash away the blood and tend to his wounds. As the criminal was handcuffed and led away, the police conducted a forensic sweep along the shared ceiling space between our two apartments. That was when a shocking truth was uncovered that left me completely devastated. The space above the drywall ceilings of my apartment and his was completely connected. The neighbor had taken advantage of this design flaw to crawl into my home for months. He had cut tiny peepholes along the ventilation pipes that looked directly down at my bed and my bathroom. In the crawl space right above my headboard, the police found a pillow, a flashlight, a few empty soda cans, and all of my missing underwear carefully stored away. That sick monster had been lying up there every single night, smoking cigarettes, which explained the smell, and spying on me for a very long time before he finally decided to jump down with a knife to murder me. He was arrested and received a fitting prison sentence under the law. My husband and I moved away immediately after, doing everything we could to ensure he stayed behind bars for as long as possible. But even though he is locked away, the trauma he caused me has never truly gone away. More than 30 years have passed since that horrific night. To this day, I still cannot get a good night's sleep if I have to stay home alone.
My name is Bradley. This story happened a while ago and became the most bizarre experience of my life so far. I had just graduated from college and landed my very first job. At first, I was still living in the apartment I rented during my student years. But since I didn't have my own car yet and had to take the bus, commuting to work every day took way too much time and left me completely exhausted. I decided to find a new place closer to my office. As a new employee, the expensive cost of living in Boston was a massive financial burden. But right around that time, a real estate agent hooked me up with an apartment rental at an incredibly cheap price. The apartment was on the 10th floor, which was the top floor of an old building. It was small, but it made commuting easy and was more than enough to make a recent graduate like me happy. From there, taking the bus to my office took only about 15 minutes. I liked it so much that I signed the lease almost immediately. After I moved into the new place, everything was pretty peaceful. Even though the building was outdated, the hallways were a bit dim, and the elevator made a heavy, groaning sound whenever it ran. I didn't care much because my commute was so much better. I had more time to sleep, and my mental state improved a lot. Until one night, things started to get weird. That day, I had to stay late at the office for overtime. By the time the bus dropped me off at the building, the entire apartment complex had fallen completely silent. There was only the faint glow of the hallway lights and the dry, harsh scraping sound of the old elevator echoing in the night. The building's elevator used a very old-school design, the kind you almost never see anymore. The elevator shaft was surrounded by an open metal mesh frame, and the door on each floor had a small glass window set right at eye level. As the elevator moved, the person inside could catch a quick glimpse of each floor's hallway as they passed by. Dragging my exhausted body along, I stepped into the elevator. While waiting to go up to the 10th floor, I just stared through that small glass window, watching each floor pass by. Suddenly, as the elevator passed the 9th floor, I locked eyes with a man standing right up against the outside of the door in the hallway. I jumped out of my skin. In that split second, I clearly saw that his face was completely covered in blood, and it even looked badly disfigured. Thinking a horrific accident had just happened, I immediately smashed the button for the 9th floor to go back down and check on him. However, when the elevator doors slid open, there was no bleeding man standing there. The hallway was completely empty. There wasn't even a single drop of blood on the floor. I stood there dazed for a moment, and then reasoned with myself that it was probably just very late, and working overtime had made me so tired that my eyes were playing tricks on me. With that thought, I went back up to my apartment. The next day, I had to work late again. When I got back home late, I stepped into the same elevator. This time, the elevator suddenly stopped on the 9th floor all by itself. At first, I thought someone had just accidentally pressed the button from the outside and walked away. But when the doors opened, the 9th floor hallway was completely vacant. Right then, for some reason, I remembered the man covered in blood I had seen the night before. A sudden shiver ran down my spine. I looked around one more time and tried to calm myself down, telling myself it was all just a coincidence. But from that night on, every single time I worked overtime and came home late, the elevator would stop on the 9th floor. This exact thing kept happening over and over, making me think that the elevator system was genuinely glitching out. Eventually, I went down to the building's management office to report the elevator issue. The manager seemed a bit surprised when I mentioned the 9th floor, but he didn't seem overly worried. He wrote down my complaint and said he would have a maintenance crew check the system as soon as possible. Still, I couldn't shake the gut feeling that something was wrong. That night, curiosity and anxiety wouldn't let me sit still. I decided to find out for myself if anything unusual had ever happened on the 9th floor of this building. I started searching for information about the building online. After digging through old local news articles and threads in a residents' forum, I uncovered an accident that had happened there about a year earlier. According to the article, an elevator technician had been sent to fix a malfunction on the 9th floor in the evening. While the mechanic was working near the open shaft, the elevator car, which was stopped on the 10th floor, suddenly suffered a catastrophic failure. He didn't have time to get out of the way and died instantly at the scene. The article didn't show a picture of the victim, but just knowing the accident happened right on the 9th floor gave me goosebumps. I immediately pictured the man I had seen through the small window on the elevator door that night. The face covered in blood, the eyes staring directly into mine for that brief second. Before this, I had kept trying to convince myself that it was just a hallucination brought on by exhaustion from working consecutive days of overtime. But after reading that article, I wasn't sure anymore. The very next day, management hired a technical team to inspect the entire elevator system. They performed maintenance for nearly a whole day before putting the elevator back into service. Ever since that tune-up, the elevator never stopped on the 9th floor on its own again. Everything seemed to return to normal. Even so, I still couldn't forget what I had seen. If that phenomenon was purely a technical glitch, why did it always happen on the exact floor where the mechanic lost his life? And if it really was just a coincidence, then who was the man covered in blood I saw through the glass that night? I stayed in that apartment for 1 more year. Once my job and income became more stable, I finally moved somewhere else. During the rest of my time in that building, whenever I stepped into the elevator, I absolutely refused to look through that small glass window on the door ever again.
This story happened when I was in elementary school. At the time, I had a best friend named Tabby, who was always cracking jokes and pulling pranks. I knew Tabby was very brave and had a special obsession with ghosts and spirits. But I never thought that one day things would go way too far. One day during class, Tabby suddenly turned to me and whispered that he could actually see ghosts. I immediately figured it was just another one of his pranks, so I didn't pay much attention to it. Then, one afternoon, Tabby invited me over to his house to hang out. After school ended, I walked home with him. Tabby's house was located in the suburbs, in a very quiet neighborhood with barely anyone walking around. The moment I stepped through the front door, I felt a wave of discomfort. Even though it was broad daylight outside, every single window in the house was shut tight. Heavy, thick curtains were drawn completely closed, blocking out all the sunlight and leaving the inside pitch black and freezing cold. I asked him out of curiosity why the house was like this. Tabby casually explained, "Because the ghost in this house loves the dark. It can't stand the light." Hearing that made me a little annoyed. I reminded Tabby that he knew exactly how much I hated scary things, and I demanded that he stop joking around. However, Tabby's face didn't look like he was joking at all. He looked straight at me and confirmed in a completely serious voice that he wasn't lying. To prove it, Tabby took off the necklace he was wearing, hung it over the living room doorknob, and gave it a gentle tap with his finger. And then, something very bizarre happened. Normally, a necklace would just swing back and forth a few times and then stop. But this time, it kept swinging continuously, showing absolutely no signs of slowing down. Tabby stared intensely at the swinging necklace and whispered, "See? It's playing with the necklace right now. Right at that exact moment, that creepy phenomenon unfolded before my eyes. A sudden numb sensation appeared and spread all the way down my left arm. The eerie timing between the swinging necklace and the bizarre feeling in my body caused total panic to explode inside me. Unable to handle that suffocatingly weird atmosphere for another second, I screamed, bolted out the door, and ran as fast as I could all the way home. Once I was back in the comfort of my own bedroom, I slowly calmed down. I started to feel guilty for leaving so abruptly, so I decided to call Tabby to apologize. But as soon as he answered, Tabby broke down in tears, sobbing that he was the one who should apologize for scaring me. After a long hesitation, Tabby told me that while I was at his house, the ghost had tightly latched itself onto my left arm. I gasped in pure terror when I heard that. From the moment I left Tabby's house up until that very second, my left arm had been constantly tingling and numb for no apparent reason. From that moment on, my arm grew more and more uncomfortable by the hour. But I didn't dare tell my parents because I was afraid they would scold me and tell me I was being ridiculous. Worse, they might drag me to the doctor to get a shot. That night, I tossed and turned for hours because my left arm kept aching. Finally, around 2 a.m, after tossing and turning in agony, I drifted off to sleep without even realizing it. But that wasn't the end of it. When I opened my eyes the next morning, I discovered I was lying in a hospital bed. The first thing I felt was a dull ache all over my body, especially in both of my arms. My right arm was hooked up to an IV drip, while my left arm was covered in dark bruises, looking as if it had been slammed hard against something. My mom was sitting right next to me. Her face was full of worry, and her eyes were red and swollen from crying. She kept asking me how I felt. I asked her what had happened, and she recounted the events of the previous night. Around 4 a.m, while she was asleep, she heard strange noises coming from the living room. She walked out and found me walking around the house with a blank, soulless expression on my face. She called out my name, but a second later, I suddenly collapsed onto the floor, completely terrifying her. No matter how much she shook me, I wouldn't wake up. So my parents immediately rushed me to the emergency room. Later that afternoon, I was discharged from the hospital. The doctors had run a whole battery of tests, but couldn't find a single thing wrong with me. They suggested that I might have experienced a severe episode of psychological stress or a sleepwalking fit, causing me to wander around unconsciously and bump into the furniture. As soon as I got home, I immediately called Tabby and told him about everything I experienced that night. After listening to my story, Tabby burst into heavy tears over the phone, repeatedly apologizing to me. He promised he would never let anything like that happen again. And true to his word, from that day forward, Tabby absolutely never uttered the word ghost or brought up anything supernatural in front of me again. By our final year of middle school, Tabby's family moved to another state, and we gradually lost touch over time. But even now, whenever I look back on that memory, I still can't fully make sense of it. Because I was so young back then, I don't know if Tabby just used some clever trick to fool me, or if he genuinely had the ability to see ghosts. Either way, it remains an incredibly strange and chilling experience in my life.
I'm Logan, 36. Moved back to my hometown in Texas after over 10 years of living in other states and trying out all kinds of jobs. Started everything from scratch, but it's all good. I'm fine and feeling optimistic about it all. For the past 3 months, I've been working at a Circle K near my place, doing both gas station attendant and cashier stuff in the store. The job's not hard, but It eats up almost my whole day. Sometimes I make mistakes when I'm working late for long stretches, or when the gas station and store get packed. I told my boss we should hire someone else so we can split shifts. A week after putting up the job ad, the store got a new employee named Benny. He's 7 years younger than me, tall and skinny, with green eyes under a mess of hair. He's really into his old Converse, worn out soles and covered in layers of dust. He always walked heavy, shoulders hunched, looking like a human clothes hanger. He always smelled kind of burnt. Wasn't bad, but it threw people off. Benny was quiet, just a few words to customers like hello and thanks. Even though Benny looked and acted kind of odd, his work attitude was solid, always on time and really detailed. Since Benny showed up, my job's been a little easier. But trouble hit after just 2 weeks. The store started noticing stuff going missing. Not sure when this started, but I only noticed when the stock and sales numbers were way off. So I told the boss. Benny and I are the first ones to take the fall for this. The boss just stayed calm when he heard what I had to say. There are security cameras in the store. Can you check the footage from the last 5 days to see if anything's weird? You're off tonight and I'll pay you full. That's what the boss offered, and I had no reason to say no. Maybe I had been working for a long time, so he decided to trust me. Yep, Benny's weirdness made people around him feel like he was unpredictable. That night I just chilled, did some stuff around the house and ate. Then I crashed on the couch, popped open my laptop, and started checking the footage. 9:30, August 26th. Benny was at the register, messing with some random stuff. A few minutes later, a customer walked in. Anna. I know her. She's a regular. Anna grabbed a bottle of shower gel and a magazine. As soon as she left, another guy walked in. A tall, brown dude. He grabbed something. I zoomed in and saw it was a bottle of engine oil. For the next 20 minutes, no more customers came in, and Benny just stood at the register, not moving. I started yawning, and my eyes were getting super heavy. I left the laptop and pulled out my phone to scroll through a shopping site. It wasn't until I heard a noise that I remembered I was actually getting paid for this, and focused back on it. Benny was arranging stuff in the freezer section. I watched him closely, and he wasn't doing anything weird. The customer bell rang again. Yep, it was Anna. She probably forgot something. Happens all the time. Shower gel in the magazine, I muttered when I saw what Anna was bringing to the counter. I was curious, but then I figured everyone's got their own thing they're into. As soon as Anna left, a tall guy with brown skin walked in. "Wait!" I yelled, sitting up straight. Earlier, must have just been a coincidence. He probably wanted to buy something else," I mumbled. I was watching every move of that brown-skinned guy, and then, "Engine oil?" I said, reaching out to pause and zoom in to double-check. I got up, walked to the fridge, poured a glass of cold water and drank it all. I was more awake, went back to the couch, put the laptop on my lap, and focused on watching. For the next 20 minutes, Benny was back to cleaning around. While he was by the freezer, the alarm went off again. I widened my eyes to see the customer coming in. "Anna?" I froze, my heart racing as she walked over to the toiletries counter. A bottle of shower gel and a magazine. That's what she had when she came to the register. I ran my hands through my hair and squeezed. I couldn't say a word, just stayed like that, letting the pain remind me that was real. As soon as Anna left, the brown guy showed up again. My heart was racing. "Please, please, please," I silently begged him not to grab another bottle of engine oil. But what I wanted and what the guy did were totally different.
What the hell is going on? I yelled when I saw what the guy bought for the third time. I looked at the time on the screen. It was still 9:30. I clicked on any part of the recording, and it still showed the same time. I slammed the laptop shut, ran to my room, locked the door, and stared at the clock all night, making sure time was actually moving. As soon as it was daylight, I was both excited and panicked, rushing to the store. Benny didn't show up to work today, and the boss couldn't get a hold of him either. I played the recording for him to see. Once again, the boss and I were stuck in some crazy time loop. The only people we could count on at that point were the police. While we waited for the police to figure things out, the boss and I took turns running the store and the gas station. I was always distracted, just constantly staring at the clock. 2 days after the boss reported it, the police showed up at the store. Based on what you told us, we looked into this young guy named Benny Mason. He's 27. The address he put on his resume is your store. Didn't you catch that? 6 years ago, this place was home to a family of 6. Sadly, the house caught fire and everyone inside died. The oldest son in the house was the only one they couldn't find. When the police checked the tape again, they noticed something weird. With each loop, Benny's shadow on the floor kept getting shorter until it just disappeared.
I'm Ryder. This happened when I was 14. My mom and I had moved to Austin, Texas, after my dad died in a car accident 3 years earlier. My mom worked the night shift as a nurse at a hospital, so I was often home alone. I was a pretty lonely kid, partly because of my personality, and partly because of a strange allergy that made me have to avoid most things: rainwater, peanuts, milk, and even animal fur. My only joy was playing video games, and I was really good at them. I had a group of gaming friends, and they called me a prodigy. It all started when my mom brought home a new allergy medication. Many patients had tried it and found it to be very effective. I was desperate to get rid of this awful disease, so I was willing to try any medicine. My mom told me to take 2 pills every morning. They had no taste. And to my surprise, the pills actually worked for me. I could eat cheese pizza and leave the house without my mask and long clothes. I even tried petting the neighbor's dog. I was fine. There were no unusual signs. My mom was so happy that I had finally found the right medication. But then, strange signs started to appear. I was less focused and often zoned out. I would sit in front of the screen with my mouse in hand, but my reflexes were slower than usual. In an important match with my team, I kept making stupid mistakes. I could sense my friends' frustration and disappointment, but I didn't know how to explain it. Gradually, I started declining invitations to play games. I didn't feel as happy as before. Everything felt meaningless. I would play by myself in silence, but I chose to stay silent instead of telling my mom. I didn't want to worry her. My mom's job was incredibly busy. Every time she came home, she would cook, ask me a few questions, and then go to sleep because she was exhausted. I didn't want to bother her more. That fateful night, I was home alone as usual, and for the first time, I felt the apartment was eerily quiet. I sat alone in my room, staring at the computer screen that showed a defeated game. "You're not good at anything anymore," a thought popped into my head, but it was just a fleeting thought. But slowly, the thoughts became more frequent. I covered my ears, but the voice still echoed, because it wasn't coming from outside. It was coming from inside my head. "Your friends don't need you anymore. Your mom worked so hard to raise a useless kid." I shook my head hard, trying to chase it away, but the voice continued, every word as clear as if someone was sitting right next to me, whispering in my ear. My heart was pounding. Cold sweat started to run down my body. "They just pity you. They laugh at you behind your back. You know what you have to do." My body stood up as if I were being controlled. My feet automatically walked toward the medicine cabinet. I grabbed every bottle, painkillers, sleeping pills, and even the allergy medication I was using. I poured them all into a plastic cup and turned on the faucet to dissolve them. Drink it, then everything will end. You won't be a burden to anyone anymore. I picked up the cup and brought it to my mouth. Just as I started to feel the bitter taste of the pills spreading on my tongue, the phone suddenly rang. I was startled. It was a text message from Jake. "Hey, you want to play? We're gonna lose without you." The voice in my head went silent as I read the message. I looked at my phone, then at the cup of pills. Maybe I should play one last game, at least to say goodbye to the thing that used to be my everything. I put the cup down and went back to my room and turned on the computer. The game lasted longer than I thought it would, and I was leading the team. For the first time in weeks, I felt a little bit of joy. I heard my friends talking, yelling, laughing, and cheering every time I scored. I don't remember how long I played. When I heard the sound of a car, I looked at the clock, startled. My mom was home from work. Suddenly, I heard my mom call my name loudly and urgently. Before I could answer, the door to my room burst open. "What's wrong, Mom?" I was confused about what was happening. My mom ran to me and hugged me tightly. "Thank God you're safe." My mom's face became tense again. She sat down next to me and told me she had received serious news about the allergy medication I was taking. Many other people who took this medicine had experienced terrible side effects like hallucinations, severe depression, and some had even taken their own lives. I shivered, suddenly understanding why I had heard the whispering voice in my head and why I had had such horrible thoughts. My body trembled as I realized I had almost become another victim. I told my mom about what had been happening to me for the past few weeks. Just a few hours ago, I had even considered drinking that cup of poison. If it hadn't been for that text message inviting me to play, I might have. My mom hugged me, crying and repeatedly apologizing for leaving me alone. "I didn't notice you were changing. I was so worried about work that I forgot you needed attention." I hugged my mom back just as tightly. I apologized to my mom for not telling her from the beginning. But now I understand that if I had spoken up, things might have been different. From that day on, my mom always asks me how I feel. I've also learned to tell my mom everything. We understand that in a family, listening and caring for each other every day is what matters most. Now, I take a different allergy medication. My mom has requested a shift change so she can be home with me more often. I was truly terrified after I learned how I had accidentally escaped death. I have changed. I'm no longer a lonely child who locks myself away to hide from my illness. I participate in all kinds of activities, and I try more types of food to see if I'm okay with them. My mom and I both learned that listening, connecting, and knowing when to speak up can save not just a moment, but an entire life. Two months ago, to celebrate our 1,000-day anniversary, my girlfriend and I decided to go on a memorable glamping trip. Even though our budget was tight, I managed to book a newly opened glamping site in a remote town. Everything in the pictures looked like paradise until we actually got there. Contrary to its glamorous appearance, the interior was quite disappointing. In the photos, everything looked spotless. But when we stepped inside, the floor was peeling and looked unfinished. The owner claimed he had cleaned it 3 times before our arrival, yet I saw hair and some food wrappers scattered across the floor. Furthermore, when we asked for help lighting the charcoal for our evening BBQ, which we offered to pay extra for, the glamping owner just pointed to a torch lighter and a pile of charcoal already set up in front of the tent. He said, half jokingly, half seriously, "This stuff's easy. You can do it yourselves. Just let me know if you can't." Although his words seemed casual, his attitude was quite cold, as if he was trying to suppress annoyance. I felt uncomfortable, but with my girlfriend there, I didn't want to ruin the mood. so I just kept quiet. That evening, we had our BBQ. We breathed in the mountain air, sipped wine, and felt truly happy sharing that moment together. But the real problem started after we finished dinner and went inside to our room. First, the bathtub wouldn't drain properly. Then, when I lay down to sleep, I heard a loud flapping sound. I checked and realized it was the tent flap on the window, not properly secured, being blown by the wind. We couldn't sleep. It was a truly terrible night. You're probably wondering if I complained to the owner. No, I thought it would just escalate the tension. Instead, I left a 1-star review with honest comments. We cut our trip short to 3 days. Luckily, my girlfriend still felt okay about the trip overall. About 3 weeks later, I received a call from that owner. He apologized, saying he had been busy with the resort's soft opening and was late getting back to us. He claimed to have fixed the previous issues and offered us a complimentary stay voucher. I was grateful for his kindness, but also felt a little regretful for leaving the 1-star review. That weekend, we cleared our schedules and returned to the town. The interior of the resort really had improved, to the point where I wondered if this was even the same place we had stayed before. The owner even personally prepared a BBQ for us. His service was incredibly attentive, to the point of making us feel a bit uneasy. I found it strange. We were the only guests that day. When I asked about it, the owner casually said, after that 1-star review, we were affected a bit. Seeing his nonchalant expression, I felt embarrassed and said I'd delete my old review and leave a 5-star one. But he replied, no need anymore. His face, when he said that, was unusually cold. But just a second later, he returned to his friendly demeanor. Enjoy your meal. I stared blankly as the owner walked away. Around 11 p.m., we were watching TV when we suddenly heard a rustling sound outside the window. I went to check, and a figure abruptly popped up. Both my girlfriend and I jumped and screamed. It turned out to be the owner. I just wanted to check if you're enjoying the service. We're enjoying it very much, thank you. All right, I'll head back to my quarters. Just call if you need anything, okay? He left, and this time, I started to feel genuinely uneasy. That night, my girlfriend woke up thirsty. I was drifting off to sleep when suddenly, a blood-curdling scream from my girlfriend jolted me awake. Rushing to her side, I was shocked to find a very large snake slithering across the floor. My girlfriend couldn't even stand. Luckily, she wasn't hurt. I quickly pulled her and we ran out, straight to the car. I tried to call the owner to deal with it, but he didn't answer. My girlfriend was completely panicked, crying hysterically, and demanding to go home immediately. I hesitated because I was practically naked, and all our belongings, including my phone, were still in the room. Suddenly, the owner appeared right outside, pressing himself against the car window. Where are you two off to in such a hurry? You haven't checked out yet, have you? I quickly opened the car door and jumped out, feeling incredibly frustrated. Do you know what's in that room? It's a snake. A snake? His indifferent attitude truly enraged me. How can you say that? Send our luggage in the room by express delivery or mail. We're leaving. Suddenly, he pulled out a knife and overpowered me, dragging me back into the glamping tent. My girlfriend stayed in the car, pleading continuously. We struggled fiercely in the room. I was injured on my arm and leg, and the bleeding made me weaker. He screamed like a madman. You come here, use all sorts of services, and then give me 1 star. Do you know how much damage you caused me? Now you're using this snake as an excuse to make me furious. I was terrified, planning to try and escape or find a place to hide. But he lunged and overpowered me, holding the knife to my throat. His tone shifted abruptly, full of perverse delight. You'll hit your girlfriend during an argument, and I, the witness, will get hurt trying to break you two up. As he spoke, the crazy man deliberately stabbed himself in his own thigh with the knife in his hand, blood gushing out. Then he turned and shoved the knife into my hand. Now everyone will pity me for being stabbed while trying to intervene. I was completely motionless, utterly stunned. Just then, the snake, which had been slithering on the bed, suddenly bit him with a fatal strike to his neck. He collapsed in pain, screaming loudly, "Snake? Why? Why is it here?" I was too terrified, so I crawled away trying to escape this horrific scene. The sound of police sirens echoed from a distance, and everything was quickly resolved. My girlfriend ran to me and cried uncontrollably. She had called the police. After the police investigation, everything became clear. Initially, I was very sure the owner had released the snake, but that wasn't the case. In reality, it was a hilly area where snakes frequently appeared, and that's precisely why he bought that plot of land for cheap. He's currently in intensive care and will face multiple charges once he recovers. My girlfriend and I were luckily safe. Since then, no matter how bad an experience is, we only leave reviews of 3 stars or higher. So please think very carefully before leaving a 1-star review, everyone.